Oh yay! Oh yay! Oh yay! Welcome to the Royal Institution. Here to give the last in this year's series of Christmas lectures is Professor David Pye.
Thank you, Puma. You know, you feel you have to talk to them, don't you? In all the lectures this year, we've needed to use, at some point, computers. Indeed, it would be difficult in modern science not to. Computers are based upon the very principles of communication, and they have to communicate with us, and we with them, and so they are naturally found at the center of any modern communication system. So today, we're going to talk about computers. They were first conceived simply as calculating devices. Back in 1642, a mathematician called Pascal produced a device that worked rather like this. You can add and subtract by, let's say we take 5, take that round there to 5, and then we want to add it to 6, so we start again and go round to 6, and we get the answer, if I can see this straight, 11. There's 1 on here, and it's carried 1. And then we can subtract 6 again by going in at 6 and taking it backwards to 0, and the answer comes back to 5. So it will add and subtract. By adding more wheels, we can make much larger numbers. About 30 to 40 years later, another mathematician called Leibniz showed how you could make a similar mechanism, multiply and divide. And such machines went commercial in 1810, later with a motor, an electric motor, to drive them. And they existed until about 15, 20 years ago, well into my research career. A very large and ambitious such machine was made by the IBM for Harvard in 1945, and its drive shaft was 50 feet long. A very large, ambitious machine that was really one of the first ever real computers. And we have a picture here now of an early computer built during the war in order to decode German messages. The problem was to find out on any one day what code was being used so that we could try and tell what signals were being sent. And as you see, it involves quite a lot of mechanics, but already electronics was coming into the picture. And just after the war, calculators and computers went over to electronics. We have an element of such a system here. On one side, it has all the passive components of the circuit, and on the other side, 3 valves, which are the active elements. But to make a computer of any size, you need several thousand valves. So you can imagine several rooms with racks full of elements like this, and valves, in order to operate, have to be kept hot. They have a heater inside, so each one is too hot to touch, and the total amount of heat generated was quite enormous, leading to an air conditioning problem. In addition, valves only had a limited lifetime, and when you have several thousand in use at once, then they need replacing quite often. But it was very useful because even if it would only run for an hour or two before needing some maintenance, you could do an amazing amount of calculations, particularly the sort of calculations which are themselves quite simple, but which have to be done an enormous number of times, because computers can work very, very fast. It was much better, however, when transistor boards came along. When the transistor was invented, this is a transistor here, and you could pack several on a card like this. This has about twice as much circuitry as the valve unit. And transistors run cold. They're much smaller. And once we could make them in quantity, then they became very much cheaper. And they're also very much more reliable. They don't need to be changed and replaced on anything like the same scale. A transistor is made by building an electronic switch onto a small piece of silicon or some other semiconductor material. So the next stage was to see if you could put more than one transistor on the same piece of silicon and even build in the other components so that a whole circuit element like this could go onto a single chip of silicon. We have under the microscope here an early chip, which we can see there. Just focus up and down on it, with about the same number of components that are on that circuit board there. And now we're using a microscope to look at it. Those circuits are made by a photographic process with a mask through which we shine light and use that to etch layers of different materials onto the initial crystal chip with which you start. So people then thought it would be a good idea to get more and more circuitry onto the same chip. And if we traverse over here, we have a later chip coming into view now. I just tweak the focus. And there we're packing quite a lot more circuitry onto the same chip. The current state is to get an awful lot of transistors onto one chip. We have here a very much enlarged scale model of a microchip, the sort that's used in the latest transistors. The circuit, however, is nowhere near as big as this. These legs are the connectors that plug into a circuit board. From them run fine wires, and here's the chip right in the middle. In this particular one, there are 250,000 transistors with their associated components packed onto that little area there. And this is actually not just a demonstration machine. The window isn't put there so that you can see it. It's called an EEPROM, which is an erasable, a programmable memory. It comes with a program already written into it, programmed in, but you can change the program if you so desire by shining ultraviolet light through the window. That's what the window's for. The actual 1/4 megabit EEPROM is that size. That's the actual one, of which this is a large scale model. So we've gone from 3 elements there to 250,000, or slightly more than 250,000 on this little tiny chip. The next stage is to make masks so fine that they are smaller than a light wavelength. And this means that you have to use ultraviolet light or even X-rays to etch the circuit onto the chip. We've been given a picture by IBM, which is shown there, of the next level of architecture in which the wires will be only 0.005 of a millimeter, 0.5 micron thick. You see the bar up in the top right-hand corner that shows 1 micron. And that is the scale of the components that will be used. With that, within a couple of years, we can expect to have chips looking like the one you've just seen, but built on a scale so fine that they cannot be seen with the light microscope at all. And one would have to use an electron microscope, as was used for that picture. And we can expect then to get 16 million components transistor components to store 16 million bits of information on a single chip. With the development of large-scale integration, as this is called, it became possible to make calculators that were of very modest size. The pocket calculator, which can achieve a computing capacity equivalent to that of some of the early, very large, room-filling electronic ones. In the RI collection of historical instruments, we have this pocket calculator. It's all of 12 years old, which shows the pace at which these things go. And it actually will perform some calculations for us. If I want to multiply 2 by 4, we get the answer 8. But, of course, this particular one, you will understand, doesn't easily fit into the pocket. It's a little on the clumsy side. So let's look at the latest and smallest of such calculators. This one is the same size and thickness as a credit card. It has no buttons, it has touchpads. You just press your finger on the letters in turn and give it the instructions. It does all basic arithmetical functions. It has a display up here in liquid crystals, and it uses so little power that there are no batteries. It's powered entirely by this little black solar cell up here, which, despite the name, will run at any light level that's high enough for you to work conveniently by. At the other extreme, one of the latest pocket calculators is this one, which has a very large number of press-button functions. It's also programmable with over 400 program steps, and it will write on the screen so you can check the program. You know the old joke that a pocket calculator is the quickest way to make mistakes. Well, you can actually check on the screen here what you've written in. It also has over 78 memories, which is useful because you know that professors are supposed to have very bad memories. And it can also plot graphs. For instance, if there's the instructions, which you can see up there, let's ask it to plot a sine wave. And there it's drawing a sine wave graph up there. And now try something a bit more ambitious. Let's say graph 0.7 sine x plus sine 2x. Let's make sure I've written it correctly. Yes. Execute that. It now draws a sine wave with a strong second harmonic. And that sort of function is very useful to me because, as you know by now, I work on waves, the waves of bat sounds, and it's very convenient to be able to compare waves very quickly. Of course, it's not difficult to do with a book of tables and a piece of graph paper. One can plot waves, but it is very tedious to do. In this, I can punch them in and get them up very, very quickly. The only problem is that it's so comprehensive that the instruction book is much larger than the calculator. It weighs twice as much exactly. I've tried it. And while that will still go in my pocket, that has to go in the briefcase. Well, where next? I don't think we should be too proud of this marvelous miniaturization. The next slide perhaps gives us a salutary comparison. There is a microchip with a common English ant sitting on it, and the computing power of that chip is very, very much less than the computing power of the ant's brain. And there are also some very much smaller ants. So where do we go? People are working on a number of possibilities for the 5th generation. There are new and faster crystal devices. There is the possibility of doing away with electric bars altogether and using light fibers with light-operated components. that will be very, very small, and even talk of doing it on a molecular scale using protein structures. And one of the aims, of course, is to get away from the two-dimensional chip into something three-dimensional like a brain. We count in tens, and the early calculators also counted in tens because we have 10 fingers. But computers work on a basis of two. They're built of switches which only have two positions, so they count in twos. I'm told that these days you all do binary arithmetic in school. Is that right? You all heard of binary arithmetic? Where instead of going 0, 10, 100, 1,000, you go 0, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. If you then take 6 different digital positions, that's called a word of 6 binary digits or bits, then you can count up to 64, well actually 63. And that gives enough combinations to a code for all the letters of the language very easily. 6-bit word is commonly used in printing. An 8-bit word, which will take you up to 256, is the basis of a common microprocessors and mainframe, large mainframe computers, and even now some of the later microprocessors work on a 32-bit word, which takes you over 4 billion. Not that you often want numbers that big, but it allows you to do all sorts of coding and say where the numbers come from and all sorts of fancy things in the program. Not only can you code written information, though, you can code for any information at all. We have here in the microprocessor a demonstration which shows a wave being drawn, and we want to represent that in a digital form, which will come up in a moment just below. The wave can be represented by a train of digits by measuring the height of the wave at regular intervals, as shown by the little vertical bars, and representing that height as a number in an 8-bit word as shown down below. A narrow bar represents a 0, a wide bar represents a 1. We can draw a comparison between the actual wave, which might be a sound wave, as used to be put on an ordinary gramophone record, where the sound wave is impressed there as a series of wiggles, and a modern digital disc. This is a video disc that will hold enough information in digital form either to give us a whole moving film, or if the code is used for letters, that will hold up to 16 copies of the Bible on one face, should you want 16 copies on the one disk. In other words, we can use the binary code, the computer language, to code for any sort of information. And it's also useful for transmission of information. If we send a sound wave by, or any sort of wave, by a train of digits, it uses a very much wider bandwidth. As you can see, the information that has to go there to transmit those digits has to be very, very much faster than the wave itself. Much faster even than had we coded it in frequency modulation form. But it carries a number of advantages. For one thing, if you send the ordinary wave, then anything that gets added to it in the form of interference cannot be separated from the wave at the far end. And if you transmit it far enough, by radio or by a cable, by any means, it gets worse the further it gets. With a binary train, however, provided you can recognize whether it is meant to be a 0 or a 1, then as long as you can make that recognition, it doesn't matter how much they're degraded. So every so often you can have a repeater that does the recognition, makes brand new smart pulses, and sends it on completely unaffected. There is no degradation with distance. So what can you do then if you have a processor of this sort? It can handle information, provided it knows the code, of a very wide variety. You can have access to data banks, or you can call them up and pull in information, maybe down the telephone line. Did you know, for instance, that it is possible to call down pictures from satellites so that you can see the weather picture without waiting for it to come up on the television? In fact, you can do better than that. There is a satellite called NOAA 9, NOAA 9, which is in polar orbit. It passes over this country twice each day, once going north, once south. But in fact, we can see it on 3 orbits each time, so that's 6 times altogether. And for a couple of £100, you can buy a system consisting of an aerial, like that, which you stick up on the roof in the loft, connected to a receiver at a more convenient point, and a decoder. And that can be connected in turn to a tape recorder, so that when the satellite goes over, it turns the tape recorder on and gathers the picture. Here is a stored picture that was brought up from, there we are, we see the Earth, we can see Africa there, fine weather over Spain, but the rest of Europe looking a bit cloudy. We go from Saudi Arabia and Madagascar on the right over to South America on the left. And you can pull that down yourself. You can also get a closer up picture of Europe, which is really amazing. Look how much fine weather there is over the whole of the British Isles and Northern Europe. That must have been chosen on a very, very clear day. Besides taking data from other sources, you can also use a micro in an interactive way, where you control it and alter its information and use it as a store of what you want to hold and to operate on the information in the way that you want. We thought you might like to see a music processor. And on the screen you can see the melody line. I can play with that now. I can write music. I can shift it to and fro. I can take a note and I can push it up, or I can pull it down. I can change the next one, up or down. I can do anything I want to it. I can rewrite the whole thing, but I won't. I shall go back to the beginning and let you hear what it sounds like on a simple little loudspeaker. It isn't a musical instrument, but it does tell me what that music is going to do. So, here we go. Okay, now let's go back to the beginning and play it with all its parts. Well, I didn't actually write that. You may have heard it before. It was written by Johann Sebastian. But I did write a little tune, and I thought I'd like to play it to you. Let's see what you think of it. Right, that's enough of that. It does go on for another couple of choruses if anybody wants to hear the whole work. And also, when I've finished and I'm happy with that's what I want, it can then print it all out on very nice notation music paper, and I could then offer that to a real musician to play on a real musical instrument, just adding a few of the beautiful blue chords that I also wrote in that the computer can't handle because it can't take too many notes at once. So, if the computer can handle any sort of information, let's see if it can get its own information. Instead of controlling it with a keyboard, which is not always convenient, it would be nice, wouldn't it, to be able to speak to it. We saw in an earlier lecture that a computer can synthesize the voice. Can it also recognize the voice and take its orders if we just talk to it? I'm going to have assistance with this demonstration by a lady called Bethan. Would you like to come down, Bethan? Here we have a safe to show that the human voice can be used to control a secure system. Not only does it only respond to the correct code words, but it also can tell whether those code words are being spoken by the right person. Bethan is now going to train the safe to her code words because inside are some goodies that she has locked up there. So,
Bethan, Bethan, cater, 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 Bethan, cater.
fine. Now, let's assume that I am a burglar who happens to know what the code words are. I come along and say, Bethan, 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 Bethan. It hasn't even accepted the first word yet, so I can't take the second. You try.
Bethan, cater.
There you go, goodies. British Telecom have also given us a device that shows how you can make telephone calls using the voice alone. Here is the telephone. I have to program it myself to recognize my voice. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, mistake, stop. It now knows my voice, so next time I want to make a phone call, all I have to do is pick it up and ask for the number. And there's nobody at the other end, I promise you, it's a computer. I think I feel like a little more music. Let's call up the music service. 2, 4, 6, 8, 0, 4, 4, stop. If it made a mistake, I simply told it was a mistake and do it again. Stop means I've checked, that's the number I want on the display. It's now calling out. Is that the Beatles? Sounds like the Beatles to me.
The Golden Hit Line is now available in Portsmouth, Nottingham, Cardiff and Swansea on 8044 and Preston on 55844.
Voice recognizers can also be obtained these days in quite simple toys. We have one down here called Verbot. He's a little robot, and he responds to the voice if you train him. The voice is carried to him by a radio link, so I have a radio mic here, and I will now train him to do a few simple actions. Forwards. Go back now. Circle left. Have a little giggle. Let's see how well he does. 'Cause forwards. Go back now. Forwards. Forwards. Circle left. Go back now. Have a little giggle. Circle left. Have a little giggle. Isn't that fun? He also does other things, but you have to be a bit careful if you give him too many commands that he has to be able to distinguish clearly between the words you give him. Of course, he doesn't understand any of the words. You can try any language. You can even try nonsense sounds. I had great fun at Christmas saying boo, 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 and so on, because then I had difficulty in remembering what they were supposed to mean. That is a simple robot, because it combines the three elements of a complete body. It has a simple processor, it has a way of obtaining its information through something approaching a sense organ, and it has motors and things which will actually carry out commands to the instructions of the processor. A much more elaborate robot is seen in the next film, which can actually read sheet music and play it with 10 fingers, or 8 fingers and 2 thumbs, on an electric organ. That's absolutely marvellous, but it did take, so they say, 50 engineers 3 years to build it and process it. And I can't help wondering whether it was really worth it. At least, perhaps not until I've asked it to play my own tune. Perhaps if I send the music out to Japan, they will try it out on it. A very simple robot has just those 3 elements. This one is a line-following robot, or line-following mouse. And it's been provided by Mr. Bill Coates, who is the Senior Experimental Officer here at the RI. Underneath here, it has a little row of photo receivers that will look for a black line on the floor. Through a simple processor, control 2 motors with the wheels that then steer it, and it tries to follow the line. As it's Bill Coates' mouse, I'm going to ask Bill Coates to demonstrate it to us. There we are, Bill. That's better. Can we turn him around the other way? Yep. He's normally very clever at this. Now we've changed the points, you notice, or Bill has. And he finally makes it. Animals are very easily upset by a change of surroundings. However, we also have with us today Enterprise, who is a super mouse. Enterprise is a very clever mouse. He can learn a maze. And he actually won, for his builder, David, the European mouse maze running competition in both 84 and 1985. And the 1985 trophy is this solid brass piece of cheese with solid brass holes in it. And I should explain what's going to happen. The only thing the mouse knows, this electric mouse, when he's put in here, is that he has to get over this corner. He has no idea where the walls have been put, but he follows the walls by looking for the red tops with photocells at either side. He will make a number of attempts to get over here, and when he realizes they're wrong, remember that they're wrong and not use them again. All right? Let's see how he does. We start with a random search. Mistake. He now backs into that, shoots forward. Another mistake. And another mistake. Try and remember where these blind alleys are, because he shouldn't ever do it again. Remember, he knows nothing about it at all. How well would you do if you couldn't see over the walls? And here he is. There we see his little trolley underneath, the light sensors either side, and on top are the circuits. Now, when he won the European trophy, he was done as a timing against the clock. And so now we're going to let him run again and see what route he takes this time on the basis of the knowledge already learned. And we're actually going to time him and see how he goes. Are you ready? Go. Absolutely. Stop. It's worth pointing out, you see, that the more mistakes he made the first time, the more he learned. So he got it absolutely perfectly the next time. Now, I think that looks like the optimum route. But let's try him just one more time. When he knows the way on a straight, you see how fast he goes. Right. Let's go now. Here. Much more elaborate robot can be made if we make an arm that can move in all different positions. And we have one here called RTX. They can be fitted, of course, with any way of getting information and a number of ways of using the arm. RTX has two ways of getting information. He listens to voice, and he also has an eye. His eye is in the arm itself here, just close to the fingers, so that he can look at things that he wants to pick up. I have programmed him to, or he has been programmed, to do something very, very delicate. I'm going to put this little dish anywhere in that rectangular area. And I would like, would you like to stop me? I'll move it, no, stay there please, but I'm just going to move it around and you say stop when you like me to leave it where it is, okay?
Stop.
Will that do? Right. In that, I'm now going to put an egg. And we're going to ask the robot to pick it up. But to start with, the robot arm has no idea where we put it, because this young lady just told me where to put it. I start by switching him on, by saying, listen, 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 listen. Right, he's now switched on. I'm going to tell him to look for the egg. Search, search, search. He's now looking for the egg with his eye, and on the screen there you will see what he's seeing. He's searching the board. He's nowhere near it just at the moment. Scanning the board. Ah, now we begin to see it. Now he's found it, he moves into a more careful search phase so that he can find out exactly where he thinks the egg cup and the egg are. Does this more slowly until he's got it in center screen. Now he moves straight over where he thinks it is and has another look to center himself up accurately over it. And he goes round in a spiral now, ending up, we hope, exactly over the egg. Now I need a little more help. There are several positions over here. I would like, young gentleman in red, would you like to choose any number?
4.
4, right. 4. 4. 4. 4. He comes to a halt there. So he found the egg, he picked it up, and he put it in number 4, although I had to bully him a little bit. I bet you all thought that that's a pot egg, or at least a hard-boiled one, didn't you? All right. Break the egg. One can imagine he could almost make an omelette. Such a device is very useful in light industry, and you can imagine how useful it would be to somebody who's totally disabled. It can be controlled by any means that is convenient to that person, and an arm like that placed close to them could pick up the phone so that they can then call out the number and be identified, all right? You don't have to dial. It can feed you and operate a micro, do all sorts of things. So as an extension of the human body, a robot of that kind can be very useful. Industrial robots are often quite a lot bigger, and they are able to do very repetitive jobs extremely well without ever getting bored. We have a short film now showing 5 of them doing a multiple quality test on the paint of a car bodies at a car factory. And they're doing this by observing the paint with laser beams. It looks to me exactly as if they're sniffing it. There are 5 at once, working in a highly coordinated fashion. Doesn't it look as if they're sniffing? And of course they're reporting back their findings to a main computer that will say whether that ought to be looked at again by people. Those are Puma arms, and here we have a Puma arm with us here today. We're going to ask him to do a trick that is very delicate, and we're going to use another egg. So if I pinch an egg from there, you already know that this particular Puma is fitted with a voice. So I'm going to leave him to describe the trick that he's going to do for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to perform a task of great skill and dexterity. To achieve this task, I will need a pin.
The fingers in his arm have now grasped the metal, which has a pin stuck to it.
As you can see, I am now holding a small pin in my fingers. With this pin, I will pierce the egg below without breaking it. If you all hold your breath, I will give it a try. As you can see, the pin has now pierced the egg. I shall now remove the pin from the egg. To prove it was not just luck, I shall place the pin back into the egg through the hole I have just made. After all that concentration, I need a rest.
I thought one of the points of robots is that they didn't need a rest, but this one seems to have a mind of his own. Let me just show you there really is only one hole in that egg. You all see that? Okay. Now those movements were made very slow and deliberate, not especially because of the delicate nature of the task, but so that you could all see exactly what was going on for demonstration purposes. I can also control the arm myself using quite a simple control box. Here we are. Let's say I want to drive the tip in straight lines in all 3 directions. Then I press that one, and I can go that way, and back, that way, and back, and the third way, up and down, and back. Fine. But remember that these arms are all pivoted and therefore moving on arcs. So for the fingers at the end, perhaps holding a tool, to go in a straight line, perhaps to draw a straight line on a piece of paper, involves an elaborate coordination. It's simple for me to give the order, but the computer standing behind the arm here has to work out exactly how to control several movements within the arm in order that the end goes in a straight line. Let me just show you how many movements there are. First of all, he can turn on his body. Then he can go at his shoulder. and at his elbow. And then down at his wrist, there are 3 more movements. This one, that one, the other way, and finally, that way. 6 different kinds of movement which are necessary if he is to be able to put the tool with his fingers in any position within what you might call his arm's reach. For the next test, we're going to ask him to do something rather faster. But first, we need to have a comparison. You've all heard of pinning the tail on the donkey. That's what we're going to do now. I need an assistant for this. Would you like to come down, please? You've played pinning a tail on the donkey before, haven't you?
Yeah.
What is your name, please?
Emily.
Emily. Well, Emily, what we're going to do, I'm going to put this blindfold on Emily, let her feel the edge of the board, take off the tail, turn around, and try and get her to put it back. Okay? Can you put the blindfold on? Make sure it's comfortable. Right. Now your left hand there, you feel where it is?
Yeah.
With your right hand, there's the tail of the donkey, right? You sure you know where that is now? Mm-hmm. Take it off, please. I'm going to turn you around. Again, for good luck. Right, your left hand, there. Right. You know where the tail should go? You sure that's right? Okay. Now look at it. It's not quite where the tail is normally, but it's very good. Thank you very much. Now we're going to ask Puma to do it. Emily was pretty close there, better than I could do, I'm sure. But now we'll put it on the stand for Puma. Put the tail there where Puma can reach it. And stand back. Of course, after a lot of science fiction, you might have expected robots to look rather like people. But really, there's no point for an industrial robot. There's no point fitting it with more sense organs or effectors than it actually needs to do its job. The average industrial robot does not need to move around. He can be bolted to the floor, and as long as the arm can reach all the jobs that he needs to do, then that's all you need to give to him. He can be fitted with a variety of different devices, but for any one job, a limited number will do. I suppose it's possible that with the progressive miniaturization of computers, greater and greater computing power in smaller and smaller volumes, that one could envisage a sort of general purpose personal assistant robot that will live in your home and make the tea and sweep the floor and do the washing up, and perhaps go with you when you need to go somewhere, in which case it probably will have to look something like us, because we are built for general purpose things, and we make our things so that we can use them. So the robot too would have to do something like that. But I suspect that sort of thing is in fact a long time in the future. However, who knows? Perhaps such things exist even today on some galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody. Have you by any chance seen, Professor Pi, I presume. How do you... Puma? Sorry. Yeah. There you are, Professor Pi. So sorry. It's been such a long journey. My word, you look rather like R2-D2. He will be most interested when...
Excuse me, can I introduce myself? I'm Professor Pi.
A human? Well, how do you do?
How do you do?
I am C-3PO Human-Cyborg Relations. I understand that you are giving this year's lectures on communicating, though they still have a lot to learn. And I thought I might be of some assistance.
Well, that's very kind, but I'm afraid we're just finishing the series.
But, sir, if I might venture an opinion, I am something of an expert on the subject. I am fluent in over 6 million forms of communication, and am thoroughly at home in any local galaxy. Why, I can even use trivial language like BBC Basic.
Well, you're certainly much in advance of anything we have on this planet yet, but things are coming along fast. I mean, who knows, maybe one year the Royal Institution Christmas lectures will be given by a robot.
Oh, sir. But perhaps I should point out that however sophisticated we robots may become, we only exist to serve our masters. And of course, we're only as good as humans make us.
Well, there's certainly a lot you and I have to talk about, but right now we really do have to finish the lecture. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you all for being such a splendid audience.